Hey everyone, welcome to the webinar. This webinar is specifically, as you can see, about investor outreach, turning your personal network into a community of investors, and it's with me, Scott, and Kirsty Ranger from ISQ Crowdfunding. I'll quickly, before we get going, I'll quickly introduce myself and then give Kirsty a brief opportunity to introduce herself. But essentially, as it says, I'm a lead of one of the campaigns teams at Seedrs, and specifically I deal with campaigns that are raising below £350,000. So actually that means that I deal with quite a lot of people who are early in their stages of fundraising and business, and actually personal outreach and kind of, finding those first investors in the business is quite a common place for me. I probably have this conversation every day of my life. Well, every day of my life, every day of my career at Seedrs at least. And also I've been an entrepreneur myself. I've raised money for my own business, attended a couple of accelerator programs, now no longer doing that. An entrepreneur on a break, as you say, but helping other entrepreneurs and from my own experience, mobilize their personal community to crowdfund. So that's a bit about me. Kirsty, do you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I will do. Can you hear me okay, Scott?
Yes, absolutely fine.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsty, CEO of ISQ Crowdfunding, and I've been working with Seedrs for a number of years now. I started my journey into working with Seedrs via our own crowdfunding campaign many years back now, and since then we have gone on to help many companies to raise millions of pounds and euros on the Seedrs platform with a very high success rate. The way that we work here at ISQ is to help business leaders to plan, prepare, launch and run highly successful equity crowdfunding campaigns on platforms like Seedrs. So I'm really looking forward to talking you through a little bit about what works today, how you can engage your own personal networks into a community of investors for any upcoming crowdfunding campaign that you might do.
Great, I'll get going. So I think firstly it's probably worth me presenting the problem that I'm sure all of you are facing or have faced at some point, which is literally, you've got a business, you've made the realization that actually you need investment to scale that business. And I just want you to imagine you're sitting at your desk and thinking, I need investment, right? What do I do? What is the next step? So you might probably be thinking of pretty much all of these pictures. So, maybe you're getting a ticket to Web Summit because you've heard there are investors there. Maybe you're applying to Dragon's Den so you can get Peter Jones to invest in your business. My favorite picture is the one in the middle. I think that's Andreessen Horowitz, which is a VC Silicon Valley firm. But I guess that's the idea. I hear a lot of entrepreneurs saying, "Oh, I need to go off to California to Silicon Valley to find investment." And I've included the Patagonia gilet in the right, which is the signature clothing option of most VCs in Silicon Valley. And then I've even included wine tasting at the bottom because there's a couple of people think, oh, I need to go somewhere where rich people hang out, and rich people hang out at wine tasting. And then the top right is just an investor event, which I've been to several myself as an entrepreneur, and I think it's fair to say I didn't go to a single good one where I actually found anyone that was resembling an investor that was interested in my round right now. So I think it's fair to say, these might all be what you're thinking, but we're here to show you an alternative to all of these, because the reality is very, very different. This is, before I say anything, this is not an official stat, but this is certainly a stat that is true from my experience. In 95% of the time, the first investor in a business is somebody the founder already knows. So if you recall back to the slide that I just showed you with all those pictures, obviously you don't already know those people. Ultimately, the people that are going to take that first leap on your business quite often take a leap because of you as a person, not necessarily the business actually. And that is obviously biased towards people that already know you and back what you are doing as a founder and a person. And in 95% of the cases I see at Seedrs, where we're working the first round, the first investor in that round is somebody that the entrepreneur already knew when we first spoke about the fundraise. So we're going to take you through contact to getting an investment. So the whole idea that, as I presented at the beginning, you're sitting at your desk thinking of investment. We're going to show you an alternative way to kind of engage your personal network and then get them involved, and we'll take you through the whole process. And to that, I'm going to hand over to Kirsty, because ISQ do a fantastic process that kind of helps hold the hand of entrepreneurs to take them through this. And Kirsty will explain it from her years of experience handling it. So over to you for this bit, Kirsty.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, so as Scott has said, equity crowdfunding really means that we can open up an investment opportunity to anyone. So it's not just your stereotypical investors that Scott talked you through here that can actually come and join in with a campaign. Crowdfunding really, firstly and foremostly, it allows you to invite your own contact lists, including professional contacts, friends, family, customers, to have the opportunity to become part of your success. So it's really crucial to make sure that you're really building out and continuing to achieve momentum within your own network in order to have a raise that reaches its full potential. And you should be doing that every step of the way. And crowdfunding will absolutely open you up to new investors. And of course, Seedrs have lots of investors sitting behind their platform that will see your campaign, but these investors are typically not the first people into a round. So what I'm going to talk you through here is a 4-step process. So we've got broadly step 1, which is your network engagement and expansion activities. And that goes on from now right the way through to closing your campaign. We've got step 2 there, which is general investment warm-up. So this is where you start to really generally warm people up to the fact you're going to raise investment. And we've got the more specific crowdfunding warm-up. And we've got finally getting people over the line into the campaign with investment on the bar. I'm going to take you through each of these in turn and just talk you through them in a little bit of detail. So Scott, are you all right to jump onto the next slide, please?
Yeah.
So step 1, let's start with network engagement and expansion. Next slide, great. So this process should start right now, even if you aren't really thinking of crowdfunding just yet. This is something I recommend you start now, and you continue right the way through to closing your campaign. But when you're working on your business, especially if you think you might like to crowdfund in the future, a really big mistake that I see people make is only talking about what they're up to in their business when they need something from people. And it's much, much harder to ask people for money who don't know your business and your story with the business. If people are engaged and they're tuned into what you're doing, it's easier to turn that conversation toward investment. So really make sure you're engaging your network before you need to ask them for anything. Allow people the earliest opportunity to follow your story. And you can do this on platforms like LinkedIn, which is my preferred platform. Or you can use email and create a mailing list. Even if you're not considering a fundraise soon, you can really start doing this now, because you never know when you might need something from your crowd. So find a way to share information about your business. Lots of our clients use LinkedIn, but emails work too, as I've said. And I really like candid emails and posts. So introduce what you're up to, perhaps show a bit of vulnerability, talk about what has been really hard with your journey so far, what's been great, what's been fun, what have you learned, and really let people in, invite them to ask questions and to follow you and keep in touch. Other things you can do with platforms like LinkedIn is to really share information specific to your industry. So you can write and share original content, you can engage with other people's posts to strike conversations. And when you're posting things out about your business, really start to notice who are the people that are noticing what you're doing. Okay, so who are the people who are opening your emails? Who are people who are replying? Who's liking your posts? Who's commenting? These are the people who are tuned in and interested. So connect with them, thank them, and keep in touch. And these people can become your almost like your inner circle. So you can make a note of their names, and you can pull out those names later to speak to these people individually if it comes to a fundraise. As I said, it's much easier to strike conversations about investment with people who are already half interested. And finally, have a think about friends you haven't met yet. If you're thinking about a platform like LinkedIn, every new connection you make has hundreds of their own connections. So sift through those, see who you're mutually connected with. Really, this can be a nice way to strike up a conversation. So ask for introductions, for instance. Okay, Scott, can I have next slide, please? So everything that I just covered in that previous slide, that should really help you to create that list of people who are interested and engaged in your business, and people who you've had direct conversations with. And this comes in really, really useful if you're looking to do a crowdfunding campaign, because you need to have a list of potential investors. And in this presentation, we're calling this your lead list. Okay, so all of your networking and network expansion activities that you're doing all the time should be really generating new names for this list constantly. And there are lots of groups of other people you can consider adding to the list too. So family, friends, customers, any angel investors you've met previously. But in order to go into step 2 of that 4-step process we're talking through here, you need to have put this list together. So, sit down with your co-founder, open a bottle of wine, whatever you want to do, and just try and pull together a list of potential investors. So aim for, at least 100 people to begin with, remembering that, with equity crowdfunding, the minimum investment could be the price of a few cups of coffee. The maximum investment could be up to your full amount. So really keep that audience quite broad. Next slide, please, Scott. Great. And again, so you've got that lead list. So you've been doing all your general networking activity, step 1, and that's ongoing. You're building that really nice lead list. Step 2 is about general investment warm-up. Okay, so this is the stage where you are aiming to secure early investors, so the first people who are taking interest and saying, yes, I would like to join this round of funding. So you've been building this engaged list of people, been taking interest in you and your business, and it's time to turn that conversation towards investment. So this is where you might start sharing information with that lead list about the intention to raise via crowdfunding. Start with those that you think are most likely to invest. So introduce the concept of crowdfunding. Aim to secure those first commitments by sharing your investor deck, for instance. You can ask for feedback on that deck if you don't want to go straight in and ask for money. Ask for meetings to talk it through with you. Answer any questions that investors have, and just really start to fine-tune those materials and have good conversation towards securing investment. Eventually, this should lead to somebody saying that they're interested. So you want to focus on this step before you begin putting together your crowdfunding campaign. So if you're thinking that raising money via crowdfunding is about just going directly to the platform and creating a campaign, just take 2 steps back and do these 2 steps first to really make sure you've adequately warmed up your own network prior to doing that. So if you think of your crowdfunding campaign as the house, these conversations, securing these first kind of pledges of interest, are the foundations of that house. And there's a few techniques you can use to really use those first yeses that you get, even if they're small yeses, to leverage those to raise further investment. And I'm going to hand back to Scott briefly just to talk you through some of those techniques.
Yes, so techniques I'll advise, my clients, and actually I use a little bit myself when I was fundraising as well, honed from years of experience at hearing what works and what's not. I just want to share 3 things that I think make an enormous difference when you're communicating, and they don't have to be, crucially, none of these things are about your business specifically. They are things that everyone can do, whatever their business. So the first thing is building scarcity, and for this you need to build scarcity around 2 things that are totally within your control. The first is round size, the second is time. So I'll give you an idea. If you say I've got 50 grand committed for a £1 million round versus I've got 50 grand committed for a 100k round, what sounds like you're more popular? It's the second one. You're limiting the round size and you're making sure that you're 50% funded in your campaign. So it looks like there is scarcity. And if you don't take up that offer to invest in the business as the investor, then you're going to miss out on that opportunity, because ultimately the entrepreneur doesn't know much more. So one of the best pieces of advice I heard, and especially when you're coming to ground zero, is really think about the minimum amount you need to raise in order to get to your next stage, and put your round size at that. You really want to limit the amount you're saying you're raising to build that scarcity. And the second is time. If you say, I'm going to close the round in 6 months versus I'm going to close the round in 1 month, which one is more likely to get an investor to act? The 6-month answer, the investor's likely to think they have a lot of time to make the decision and think about it. But actually making it slightly time limited is a great way to get them to act, rather than just kind of keep them in limbo. And actually I put the Seedrs logo underneath it because the whole secret behind this is pretty much what we do as a platform to encourage investment. We create scarcity around the round size by putting a percentage bar in, so everyone knows the percentage that a business is funded and can see how far through the process they are. And we give them 40 days to fund. We literally time limit it, and that encourages action faster than would normally happen. So regardless of whether you're thinking of crowdfunding, I think those two things are great options, but that is, I guess, what crowdfunding does for you, is continue to build that scarcity. The second is FOMO. So FOMO is fear of missing out. You know, if you are talking to an investor, no investor wants to be the only investor. They want to know other people are interested, because it makes them think that they should be interested. So really making a big deal of talking about, you know, how many meetings you've got booked in the diary, or a specific investor that might have a position of authority. Actually, I have a little story on that. I have some good friends that raised some money while I was on an accelerator program with them, who their first investor in the business, they're running a kind of a sharing company for storage space, and one of their first investors was the CEO of the big yellow storage company. And guess what? Their round flew off the shelf, because everyone thought, well, oh gosh, if the CEO of one of these big companies that you know, understand this space is investing, then I need to get in on this. So that totally built FOMO, and they closed their round off the strength of that. So it's worth considering that. And then the last point, and anyone can say this again, is the next round will likely be institutional. I can't guarantee room. You know, everyone wants to raise institutional capital at a point because it's value add, and you're essentially not lying to them by saying, you know, this might be your only chance to invest in the round, but it really does help with building that fear of missing out that's going to make people act now. And the last thing is just sharing progress. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't update their audience when they're fundraising. So you know, if somebody has said no further down the line, and you say, you know, we've just hit our record quarter in an email to everyone, or we've just got loads of new customers, or we're 50% funded, or whatever, then that's going to be good news. That's going to make that person think whether they should reconsider their position, because ultimately they might be saying no because it was a maybe and they didn't want to act right now. So actually it's worth considering that as part of it too. And yeah, just to recap, build scarcity, build FOMO, and share progress, and it'll probably go a long way for you, helping you convert that personal network. And then last top tip, and again, I have this from personal experience of another friend on that accelerator that pretty much raised his whole round through this, is you need to get to a yes or a no quickly, and maybe helps nobody. So if an investor is not committing either way, that's bad. You want to get them to say yes or a no. A no is better than a maybe, because you can then follow up with the question, do you know anyone else who might be interested? Which expands your network beyond that 100 you've just written down, and opens up new opportunities for you. Because the bottom line is, if someone who says yes, they're investing in you, then they're going to want to get other people involved, because they want to see more investors involved in the round. If they say no, then they feel guilty. So take advantage of the fact that they feel guilty and say, well, okay, if you can't help, totally understand that you don't want to invest, but do you know anyone else who to help me out who might be able to invest? And I've heard founders get their best investors off the back of no's, and people who actively didn't want to invest in their round.
Yeah.
Right, hand back to Kirsty.
Thanks. Do you want to jump to the next slide, Scott?
Yeah.
Great. So totally agree with all the points that Scott made there. And I think if we just recap very quickly before we move into the next step. So you have this ongoing process of building your network. So talking to people, connecting with people, sharing things, notice who's noticing, connect with them. That network should be growing and growing and growing. And that means your lead list is getting longer and longer, and you're having more and more general talks with people around the fact that you're raising investment, you're sharing information, you're sharing that deck as it's being continuously improved and updates your investors, creating scarcity, like Scott said. So the next step, once you have those first yeses in place, once those first few people have said yes, and you have some progress already with the funding round, the next step would be to move on to step 3. And this is the best time really to now focus on ramping up your crowdfunding campaign warm-up specifically. So in this step, you're going to move your attention to warming up about the Seedrs raise. So you'll be explaining things like how to use Seedrs, what Seedrs is, explaining a bit more about crowdfunding, a rough timeline for this. So when might the campaign be launching, how it's going to run, and really crucially, how they can get in there first. How are you going to make sure that the people who are telling you that they're interested can have first access to this campaign? And that's another really nice way to create scarcity. Oh, on the right side, yeah, great. So there'll be lots of ways that you can share the general crowdfunding warm-up. So you share with individuals first on your list. You can share with groups by email. It's standard practice to create a pre-registration page, and Scott's going to come onto that in a second, so people can register for access to the campaign, just like he did with this webinar. And you can push that pre-registration page out by email, on social media. My advice is that this phase of gathering momentum should really be happening as you're building your crowdfunding campaign. So by that, what I mean is that you'll be doing it alongside writing your Seedrs campaign, creating your video, and working with your campaign manager at Seedrs to get that campaign ready to launch. So all of the points that I made back in step 1 about network engagement and expansion are also very relevant here. So you want to keep those conversations going and keep that lead list growing. And as you're sharing about pre-registration and about the campaign specifically, keep noticing who's noticing and follow up with them, add them to the list, answer questions, ask them for introductions, as Scott said, and keep step 1 of your networking activity continuing so that your list of people is always growing and your list of people to ask for introductions is almost growing. Scott's going to talk you through now the process of pre-registration, because Seedrs do a really wonderful job of helping people with this step.
Yes, so the pre-registration phase is a little invention that we've had at Seedrs that kind of gets an idea of essentially it gives that network that you may or may not think you have a chance to take action that's not putting their money in but showing interest. So it's essentially just a landing page. Think about it as any page that you would go on the internet, and all you do is click a button saying pre-register. I've actually included an example of a WeSwap there that just says pre-register. You click that button and you'd put in your email address and intended investment amount, and that ends up giving you, the founder, a list of people that have actively taken the action and clicked they're interested in investing. In return for that, the investor gets priority access to your campaign. So when you do a crowdfunding raise, there's 2 parts of it: private mode and a public mode. Private mode is something that is only visible to people who get sent the campaign, and public mode is something that is visible to anybody that goes on Cedars.com. So crucially, private mode is not available to anyone without a link or anyone that visits Cedars.com. So it's a really great way of getting you up and running, and well, at least allowing you to say to the investors they are getting something extra that others don't get, priority access to the campaign. And in return, you build a lead list that's slightly better than that lead list you put forward, because all of the people on this list will have said they're actively interested in investing in the business. And I think that's what we do from that point is help you really hone those conversations to make sure that your personal network, you're reaching out to the people that you should be from that. And we can also make an accurate prediction on how much money you're able to raise from your network at this point, which helps us set the target at a level that encourages that scarcity that I talked about in the previous slide, and puts you in the best position to fundraise as well. So yeah, that's our invention, and I know all of Kirsty's campaigns that she uses us will use this as part of the process too.
Yeah, I always this isn't scripted. It just occurred to me. I always think of crowdfunding a little bit like planning a wedding. If you're thinking about who you're going to invite, who are the people that you're going to put on that list first, then you make sure behind the scenes all the important people can come. Those are your kind of direct conversations. Then you send out the invitations. That's sort of like pre-registration, and then you step 4, actually launching the campaign, is about getting those first people on the dance floor and making sure that's a really good event. So if you think of the pre-registration step as your chance to just sort of see who is really interested in this, and what I've done here is I've just put some examples of what some outward comms might look like for this step. So what we've got here are some social media posts from some previous clients that launched on Seedrs, using that pre-registration page that Scott just discussed. So you can see that the message here is that they are crowdfunding soon, and there's a link to a pre-registration page. And as well as pushing this out on social, this will also have been going out by email to everybody on that lead list that they just worked really hard to build. So that, with the aim of getting as many pre-registrations as possible. It's important to remember that not everybody that pre-registers will definitely invest. They're simply saying that they want first access, but obviously they will need to see the campaign before they make that final commitment. So it's really good to get as many people pre-registering as possible. Okay, the next slide. Next slide. And again. Great. So the final step, you've done all of that hard work to get people engaged. You're building that network, which will be useful anyway for your business. The next step is about taking these contacts over the line to a point where they actually make their investments. And this is where all that hard work pays off. So Seedrs will let you know when your campaign is approved. It will be looking really great with a video in place. And at the point that you get it, there'll be 0% on the bar. So firstly, what you do is you get those first people on the dance floor. So you consult your lead list and you share it firstly privately with your confirmed larger investors, so the bigger ticket people who've said that they are definitely in. You allow them to make their investments first. Then it's good practice to share it with everybody who pre-registered, because you told that group of people they were going to get priority access. So you leave it with them for 24 hours or so, give them the opportunity to invest, and that should hopefully see your campaign behind the scenes get really well funded already. So when you launch to the public, it's looking really well validated for those investors that don't know you from Adam. And when you are public, what you can do is you can push that campaign out further on social media and within events or via email blasts to groups of people. So there are two ways really that you'll be talking about your campaign when you're live on Seedrs. So personally, you'll be talking about it, but the business will also be talking about it too. So personal posts that you'll put out about your campaign's progress. For instance, I would always recommend to be quite candid, and I'll show you some examples in a second. I want to share your journey to this point and the success so far. How are you feeling? How's it going? And let people really feel like they've been part of that story. And on the business side, my advice is to really kind of explain what the money that you've raised so far is going to help you to achieve, what a difference to your business it's going to make to have hundreds of new brand ambassadors on board, welcome your new investors publicly, talk about timelines such as when the campaign's closing, any exciting things that are happening within the business right now to really keep that momentum going. The information that you're sharing here when you're live on Seedrs has the aim to really take your campaign to its goal as quickly as possible to achieve as many investors as possible. So you're really looking for lots and lots of eyeballs landing on that page. And the more meaningful your updates, the more people will tune in and follow, and the more likely at some point they are to jump in and invest. It's also worth mentioning that your new investors, and hopefully there'll be several hundred of them, might connect with you by email and on social media. So you want to make sure that you don't just launch your campaign, hit the beach, be really present, be excited, respond to questions promptly, and really make your most of the time in the spotlight. And in response to a question I've just noted that's come in that I want to just address here, this really is time in the spotlight. This is very public, and you have the opportunity to get lots and lots of eyeballs on your business by raising in this way. And all of these new investors, they can then become brand ambassadors for your brand that you can tap into to help you with the growth of your business in the future. So you'll be very used to asking people for introductions by this point. And there's no reason that you can't use your investor base in the same way to really push your business forward. Next slide, Scott. And here's some examples. So same clients from earlier, I showed you some examples when they were in pre-registration, they were pushing that out. And here are some social media posts from when they were live on Seedrs that they pushed out on social media. This really helped to keep up the momentum, and all of these businesses went on to be nearly 200% funded. Okay. Scott, did you have anything to add in here on additional marketing
Yeah,
stuff?
it's interesting. It doesn't appear to pull through in the slide deck, but that it's fine. I can talk about it. Not only, obviously the promotion that you do during the fundraise is not only to your network. Seedrs, we're helping you kind of promote your fundraise to our network of investors as well. So we will do things like send emails to all of our user base, advertising people's fundraisers. We will run social ads on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn to investors that we know are interested in similar businesses. We like to target this, so we often make sure that if your business is, for example, an FMCG food and bev product doing vegan food, then we know that other customers that invest in other businesses that are vegan might be really willing and able to invest in your business, and we make sure that we target them with specific advertising and email advertising as well for your fundraise. There's also, you notice on the Seedrs page, we have some banners that we sell on the website that helps you get more eyeballs on your fundraise. It's like, kind of think about it like advertising space. That helps people become interested in your business. But I think a key thing to mention is you're going to get the best uptake on that when your business is in the best position. So when you have built that scarcity, you're 70-80% funded, and you've got 100 investors, that's when people are going to be really interested when they click on that and looking to invest. And that's really where momentum matters so much in crowdfunding. So we look for that. We have this thing called Seedrs Amplify, which is almost like a marketing agency that helps you with your fundraise with specific parts as well as that. So if you talk to Seedrs in the future, make sure you remember about Seedrs Amplify as a way to help you raise more money from our network, and we can talk to you about that as well.
Yeah, and the marketing package that you guys have, just to add in, sorry Scott, the marketing packages that you have to push out to your network, at ISQ we really do see value in these for our clients, and we always recommend that you discuss those with Seedrs, because it just helps you to really tap into their investor audience in a more meaningful way. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no worries. Well, so this is essentially the kind of conclusion to this, is making sure you understand, I guess, what we both do for you as part of the fundraising process. There's a couple of questions that have already come in that address some of these points that I will move on to immediately after this, but this is just an invitation that we're going to have a quick Q&A afterwards. So if you have any questions from anything you've seen in this presentation, please let us know. We'll move straight into that after this slide. So get them written down in the question box and we'll get going with them. So this is, I think the easiest way to split this up is Seedrs is your platform partner, ISQ is your support partner. So I've had a couple of questions come in that I will answer actually more specifically regarding, well, if I'm trying to get your whole network in, why do I need Seedrs? Well, hopefully this explains it better than I would in the answer. It answers your question. So firstly, it's we do all the structural stuff for your fundraise. So we give you a platform to accept payments for shares, so you don't have to accept the payments and organize that yourselves. And we give you a URL and campaign page to advertise the business. What this really results in the end is, let's pretend you're not using Seedrs or any platform to accept investment. The challenge that you will have as a business is you have to find a way to accept the money yourself, sign the shareholders agreement, sign the articles of association, sign the shareholder terms, and go through all of that with each individual investor, get that signed off, normally in person unless you have a DocuSign link. It's just quite an onerous process, particularly for a lot of investors. Whereas on Seedrs, we literally have a URL with the campaign page and a green button saying invest that you click, put in your card details. You automatically sign all shareholder agreements as part of our agreement, because we hold a nominee on behalf of all investors. So it's, on Seedrs, you can invest in a company in 20 seconds, whereas it's a little longer if you're not using a platform. The second thing is all the legal stuff associated with investments you need to consider. So firstly, you're not allowed to, the FCA doesn't allow you to promote your investment beyond, I guess, personal networks you have without a warning signal for fundraising and the risks of investing. We're an FCA regulated platform, so that's not a problem with us. The FCA have trusted us with the information that we are sending off, because we check that every comment is fair, clear, and not misleading, and we make sure that you can promote this without any legal implications outside of your personal network and beyond. The second I've touched on, which is shareholder legal admin. We actually handle all the shareholder certificates, EIS forms, SCIS forms, which are the tax forms that investors will want, all ourselves. You don't have to do any of that. And that is often a very painful part of the process if you're doing this alone without any support partner, especially if you're accepting, more than 10 investors. The provision of a nominee, again, something else I've touched on. We represent the rights of all the investors that invest through Seedrs. So you have one point of contact, that is us, and if you've ever got anything that you need legally passed off with shareholders, you just tell us about it. And the last thing on the legal stuff is ongoing shareholder representation, and that just means we represent your shareholders for the life cycle of the business until exit. And then lastly, the value add extras. So this is the non-boring stuff in case you've fallen asleep at the first bit, or at least that shows why the platform is needed. We have a large investor base of investors that have invested in similar businesses that you can market to and potentially get, a decent chunk of investment on top of what you've already raised from your personal network. We have a secondary market, which allows investors to get an early exit before maturity in the business. The number one problem with investing in early stage startups is your money's locked up for 7+ years normally. With Seedrs, and we developed our secondary market, so that's not a problem anymore. You can convince investors to invest in your business, and there's a very realistic opportunity they can achieve an exit using our secondary market within a year. They don't have to wait 7, and that's a pretty attractive proposition to a lot of investors. And the last thing is it's a platform to market to new customers. We get roughly 300,000 hits on our website on Seedrs, and one of the things we see a month, 300,000 hits a month. One of the things we consistently see is entrepreneurs and businesses saying, actually, I got loads more than just the investment. I had my record month of sales in the time I was there, because loads of people, even if they weren't investing, were clicking on the website, seeing what the business had to do, ordering samples, that kind of stuff. So it's a great way to promote your business almost indirectly. And in an age where advertising is so expensive, it can often be an attractive proposition. And obviously, all that's the structural stuff. Kirsty, support stuff.
Yeah, and as an option, and this is optional, we don't come as a guaranteed with any campaign on Seedrs. It is an option. You might not feel that you need support, but if you do feel that you need support with this round, where we come in is that we coach and guide you through a step-by-step structured program that will take you from I'm thinking about crowdfunding to a fully funded Seedrs campaign. So included in that, but obviously lots of other stuff as well is included, but included in there in relation to this presentation, we've got a crowdfunding CRM tool that will help you to scope and estimate the value of your crowd, track your contacts from connection to investor. We give you a full communication strategy with all of your email templates and social media examples for all of the phases of outreach that I've covered with you in this webinar. So all of those 4 steps, your marketing plan templates, guidelines and cheat sheets for producing all of your materials. So things like your investor deck, your actual Seedrs campaign, your video, all of your updates for investors. And we have oversight, review and sign off of any materials that you produce before you send them to investors or submit to Seedrs. Access to videographers and a lot more around the edges. So it's a really kind of inclusive support package for you if you feel like you would like that guidance to get you to the point where you have a funded campaign on the Seedrs platform. All right, I think that's it, Scott.
Great. Yeah, it is. Laura, just quickly, how are we doing for time? Because we can get into the Q&A.
Yeah, we still have 15 minutes left.
Great.
Okay, great. I think, Kirsty, as long as you can see it, I think it's probably best us picking a question each that we can answer from the top and then going down. But please continue submitting questions if you've got a chance. I think the first thing I think this addresses about 3 or 4 questions actually. So I'd like to explain is actually I'll go to the start of the presentation so you can see the this. So yeah, basically, I've received a couple of questions on why would I need the Seedrs platform to fundraise if you're getting the personal network, and does the ISQ help come automatically with the Seedrs service? I think just to clarify, because hopefully I clarified that to a large degree on the last one. I think to clarify that properly, it's I guess the ways to think about this is the personal network is absolutely vital to any fundraise, no matter what you're doing. It just builds potential investors from your own network already that you shouldn't have to, do enormous outreach to convince about you and the proposition of your business over a long period of time. These are people that will know you and be consistently updated in the process. And the personal network is an important part of any fundraise. I think the easiest way to see this is, we at Seedrs, we help amplify that so that you have a very easy infrastructure to accept all of those people and then go out to our investor base and make a real splash and raise lots of money quite easily, whereas otherwise you'd have to put a lot of work yourself. I think where ISQ come in is they handhold you to help you if you need that. I think it's important to mention that the ISQ service is not required with Seedrs. I think the majority of businesses don't use these kind of services, but one thing I can absolutely recommend from a personal perspective is I know what they do, and what Kirsty does is enormous help, particularly to businesses with entrepreneurs who've not got fundraising experience and are slightly nervous about the prospect. Maybe perhaps it's not obvious where the networks are that they've got that they want to reach out to, and actually this is something that they want to experience in more detail. So I think a really useful way of seeing it is Seedrs is a great way to amplify your personal network anyway. We give you advice and help, that's part of our service, but if you need any hand holding and any kind of further support, ISQ are fantastic for this. They've got an amazing success rate. And well, Kirsty, you haven't even mentioned you did 3 successful raises yourself, right? Or was it 3 or 2? But anyway, it gives a good example that they know what they're doing and can really help you feel a little more confident about the process.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. I'm trying to choose a question to answer. I think you answered most of them in that. Scott, are there any that you think I should take?
Is overfunding good? I'm interested in your opinion on this because I know ours.
Yeah, so I always say that you typically would have sort of 3 different targets when you're raising money on Seedrs. So you have a minimum investment target, and that would be the absolute minimum that you could achieve momentum within your business, and minimum you could achieve your plans. So for instance, we did a raise earlier this year. The minimum target was 750,000, but what the desired target was $1 million. So they came wanting £1 million. The minimum that they were willing to go out at was 750, and the overfunding limit was 1.4, I think. And your overfunding limit should be relative to the amount of equity that you're willing to part with at this round of funding. So you have a range of investment typically, so you wouldn't just have a kind of 0% and funded. There'd be a range, and I do think it's good practice to overfund, because if you're having that momentum, achieving that momentum, and you have that interest, then why not let more and more people come in if you have the capacity? That's my take on it. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I think what I always advise clients to do is set the targets at the minimum amount they need to raise to achieve their goals, and bake overfunding into the process, because ultimately that's when our investors become most interesting. I mean, you've literally broken the FOMO scale of the building scarcity I told you about earlier, because it's almost as if, oh, that campaign could come down at any second. It could come down in 10 minutes and I'll miss the opportunity to invest. So it's a great way to make sure investors take action whether you're in overfunding. I've got a couple of questions. Was the one about B2B I want to address probably. Does this work in the same way for B2B businesses as B2C businesses? How do you adapt? I actually want to make an interesting point here before I answer that entirely, because I think it's probably something that might have been missed in this presentation. So a really easy way to think about it is, in a crowdfunding round, money only ever comes from 3 places: the personal network, which we've talked about, the Seedrs network of investors, which we've talked about, but what we haven't talked about is the community. So those are customers that are interested in investing in your business because they follow you on social media, like what you're doing, really like your product. Now that is only available to B2C businesses. Obviously, B2B businesses, if your customer is a business, they're highly unlikely to invest as a business in your products. I just know that from experience. Although that being said, you might have account managers at some of your customers who really love what you're doing and would invest. So you should definitely pursue that angle. But I think the easiest way to answer the question about does it work in the same way for B2B, actually what we've demonstrated today is much more relevant for B2B than it is B2C. Some B2C businesses don't actually need to do the personal network stuff as carefully as perhaps we've advocated in this webinar, because actually they're in a position where they can accept a lot of money from their customers. So for example, when Revolut did their round of 3.9 million on Seedrs, and Revolut's a company I'm sure you all know. Yeah, they didn't. Nikolai wasn't getting his friends and family to invest because he already had customers that were mad about his products that could make up that 3.9 million. So I think it's what I'd say with B2B is it just makes this process even more important. You really need to work on your personal network. That is the way you crowdfund as a B2B business, because you can't rely on your customers to bail you out and help by investing in your business.
Yeah, and also some of the B2C companies that we're supporting for their first raises, they might not necessarily have a huge customer base yet, and they're B2C companies and they're still doing very well on Seedrs. So it's not only your customers that you're engaging, and I really mean that. Otherwise, I would have made much more of a thing of the customer base within this presentation, the bits that I did. You really can do this, and most of this, by really networking well within your own personal network. So whether you're B2B or B2C, that process that I took you through, and the stuff that's got added into that is all still really, really relevant. There's one that so how much time, there's one on time, how much time should people invest to go through this process? So fundraising is pretty time intensive. You're going to be spending quite a lot of time on this right from step one all the way through, and that time will build up as you go. When you're live on the platform, you or someone on your team is going to want to be quite present for that campaign most of the time. And we always say sort of at least a couple of days a week focused on the fundraising in the lead up to launch, to give it your absolute best shot. Would you say that's fair enough, Scott?
Yes, I would. No, totally agree with everything you said there.
Good. Approximately how long does successful raises take from investor outreach to investment by Seedrs? And do things slow down over Christmas? I'll answer the first part carefully, and then Scott, you might have a different take on it. So if you're right at the beginning and you don't have any confirmed investment at all yet, you're looking at kind of a good 5 or 6 month process, I would say, because you really haven't started yet. And you've got the build up to the campaign. Your campaign runs for 40 days, and then you have a completions process. What you really want to be focused on with equity crowdfunding, because it's such a great marketing opportunity, is you want to find the balance between focusing on doing this well and doing it quickly. Okay, so you can't kind of cut corners with this if you want to have a really successful raise. So my advice is never to be too rushed with this. If you're thinking about doing it at some point in the future, just start having chats about it now. Don't leave it till too much further down the line.
Yeah, I think Alex has asked a great question on should we adopt a strategy to target micro investors, e.g. £1,000 or less, or vice versa, or not either approach and keep it generic? Alex, I think this is a question we get a lot, because the benefit of crowdfunding is it really, again, I think I explained this earlier with the structure of accepting investments. Before crowdfunding existed, so we're talking, 2008, because at that point, Cedars and Crowdcube didn't exist, and we were, I guess, the first movers in the marketplace. In 2008, the way you raised investment was, purely offline, and you did so, by doing the shared documentation I talked about earlier, signing the advance, the Articles of Association, subscription agreement, shareholder terms, that kind of stuff. And really, what businesses used to do is they never bother, accepting a ticket of less than 20 grand, because it just wasn't worth the effort. particularly as they were an individual on your cap table as well that might want a board seat and might want to manage. So angel investment used to be very inaccessible. And what crowdfunding has done is actively open the fundraising sphere in startups to people that don't have 20 grand. And the minimum amount that you can invest on Seedrs is actually £10. So what that means is everyone that you know is a potential investor, because, you know, I guess it's fair to say probably everyone can afford £10 to invest in your business if they really believed in what you were doing. So I think the bottom line is sometimes that can make people think, oh, if I'm crowdfunding, I need to deliberately go after the smaller investors. That's absolutely not the case. I mean, what we are doing is opening them up to the possibility of investing where otherwise they wouldn't have that opportunity. But actually, you know, what you should be doing is getting a mixture. Some of the larger investors as well are really important as part of the round, because they really knock off the highest percentage of your target and put you in the best position. I also had another question, which I wonder whether it's caused. So from Paul, I'm going to answer this because it might be something other people are thinking, talking specifically about the Cedars and Crowdcube merger. I think you might have seen this in the news. Cedars and Crowdcube, which are the two major equity crowdfunding platforms in the UK, are merging. That is well, an exciting prospect for everyone, I think, given the large investor audience that you will get on this and the combining of resources of things that we feel we both do as individual businesses quite well that we can combine. It's really important to mention, I guess, in this current stage, the status of the merger is the contract's been signed, and you know it's going to happen, but it is subject to the Competitions Commission agreeing, and also there's going to be a process of integration where you know we combine what we're doing as two businesses. Even after that takes a little bit of time. So if you're thinking about raising, you know, definitely in the next 6 months, but if not the next 12 months, you really should, despite this news, be thinking about, you know, Seedrs and Crowdcube as separate entities, and you should be dealing with, you know, one not the other, because it's not going to be merged in the near future. So I think, Paul, you said you mentioned something about Christmas, and well, actually I'll address that separately. Investment doesn't slow down enormous amounts over Christmas, though obviously there are not many investors on Christmas Day, you know, putting their money in. But to phrase that quickly, if you're thinking about raising money around Christmas and into the early new year, you know, just act like nothing's happened, because ultimately the merger won't be in actual action. It's highly unlikely to be for, you know, at least 6 months, if not longer. So that's probably worth mentioning that in case anyone was thinking that.
Yeah. How are we doing for time? Got time for a couple more questions?
Maybe we can take one more question.
Go on, Kirsty, take your pick.
Minimum and maximum amount one can fund on a crowdfunding platform. So if you're referring to minimum investment, as Scott said, around £10, maximum is the full amount that you're raising. In terms of target size, I think the smallest raise that we've supported has been around the 50k mark, and you know, anything up to a couple of million with ISQ. In terms of raises on Seedrs itself, what's the range like, Scott?
Yeah, so it's 50k is the smallest, and we go up to 8 million. If you do more than 8 million, you have to do a prospectus, but I don't think any of you are thinking of raising 8 million plus on here. If you do, let me know.
Yeah, and we've got time for one more quick one.
I actually wanted to address a question from earlier, which hopefully has been addressed here, because there's a couple of people who've been commenting, essentially saying, I'm not sure I have a network, I've already tapped out my friends or family, or I don't think I have friends or family that are able to invest. I just want to leave it on a note which probably you know, gives you a little more of a positive outlook here. I think if you follow this process and you really sit down and think about it, I've still not met a single founder that has actually tapped out their network. You could always be generating opportunities for yourself, even if it's asking your current investors if they know anybody else they might be able to add to that. And equally, considering your crowdfunding, if the issue is that you don't feel as though you have people within your network who are wealthy enough to afford an investment, then they can still support you. And frankly, we in crowdfunding are the only people offering them the possibility of being able to do that. And every number of investment counts as well. We constantly say this with campaigns. If you're crowdfunding and you reach 100% of your target, you've got 30 investors, it still doesn't look good, even though you reach 100% of your target. Getting hundreds of investors on board is really what looks good and gives people validation. So every £10 investor counts, and hopefully, and I can certainly say this from my experience, I've still not met an entrepreneur that has actually tapped out their entire network. Ultimately, you can always be doing things that broadens your network and puts you in a better position to raise money from your personal network from that as well. And hopefully that's a positive outlook to end this presentation as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. I second all of that.
Okay, thanks. I think you'll all be receiving an email which will give further indication on how you can get in touch with Seedrs or ISQ after this process. If not, I'm certainly happy to receive LinkedIn requests. My name is is abnormal enough to probably be the only person that sees, so you should be able to find me easy. Kirsty, is there anything you'd like to add to that as well?
Yeah, I'm also very happy to receive LinkedIn requests. Any questions that you have, you can certainly email those over as well. And I know that you're going to get that information out after the webinar. So very happy to receive emails, LinkedIn requests, and also happy to have a chat with anybody who would like.
Great. Anyway, good to. I hope you all found this useful. Yeah, look forward to hearing from a lot of you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your attention.
And thanks, Kirsty.
Cheers. Thanks, Scott.